What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dead Red Podcast. We got a panel coming along tonight, as this is the second episode in a row that we'll be doing this week. Obviously, making up for last week, and obviously prediction show. So, Sox, that underlining is very unacceptable, I must say, for tonight's show. But real quickly, before we get our first thoughts in, I'm going to introduce two more members of our panel tonight. Let's start off with Jeff Macolino. He covers the Tampa Bay Rays, and then Timmy Wilcox, who covers the Baltimore Orioles. So very fun. We're expected to also have Scott Belford of the Walk-Off Podcast, who we've had on here before. Unfortunately, he's dealing with some car troubles at the moment, but we'll see if he pops on. Would love to have him on once again. But I'm going to go around for first thoughts. We'll start with Jeff, Timmy, and move it back to Sox.
Well, I'm excited to get things rolling here in the AL East. I don't know if it's just me. It feels like, and maybe again, some of this is Homer-centric, feels like not a lot of exciting off-season stuff, frankly, in the AL East. It was comparatively to prior seasons. A lot of the same faces, maybe not in Boston. They had more of maybe an overhaul, but I'm excited to get things going. And the World Baseball Classic, really, I'm chomping at the bit, man. I want baseball to get started.
Yeah. I see the excitement there, and I do agree. Timmy, what's up?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited for this opportunity here, talking baseball. With March Madness going on, baseball is almost here. 1 week from today, we're kicking the season off, so really excited for it to get going. World Baseball Classic was phenomenal, and I'm excited. I think the AL East is gonna be very talented this year. A lot of teams that are gonna be chasing for the playoff spot, so I'm excited for sure.
And then Sox with that very much unacceptable underline.
Yeah, man, Pepsi definitely stinks, but hope you guys are doing well, man. Thank you guys for joining us on the Dead Red Podcast. I appreciate it. AL East wasn't that exciting. Like you said, Jeff, the Red Sox have a lot of new faces and a lot of changes going on, but as far as big stars and stuff like that, opposed to previous years, not much going on. I think it'll be a surprising division this year, competitive as always, usually, and I'm excited for this roundtable for this evening.
Yeah, definitely. So shout outs to the chat real quick. Brad, Booyah, Daniel Berry, L.I. Yankee King. Guys, go ahead and subscribe to Sox. Subscribe to Big Blue and Bronx if you haven't already. And also the socials in the description for these fine gentlemen that have decided to join us tonight. No representative for Baltimore. Baltimore's down here. Timmy's representing Baltimore. What was I going to say? So far, there's no representative for Toronto, and looks like he will not be joining us, unfortunately. But hey, Alex, Pepsi definitely sucks. Well, Brad, you know what? You're always busting balls. So before we go into like a little description of last year's events, I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on this. And I'm an old school baseball fan, despite me being 19 years old. Still have that old school baseball mentality. I'll start with Jeff again. What do you think of the new rules that have been implemented this year?
Oh, I'm a grumpy old man when it comes to rule changes. However, I'll say this. Games were a lot faster in spring training. And I do think as much as it doesn't bother me, I know I have children, and my son has a tough time watching baseball the way it is, frankly, where it's most at bats are one of the three outcomes: a walk, a strikeout, or a home run. It's not a lot of action. At least the pitch clock, I do think, is going to bring people into the game who maybe just thought it was too long and boring. And again, the bigger bases, the idea frightened me, but I think it's going to bring more speed into the game. I think that's a good thing. The thing I still despise, and, just so happens the team I talk about the most used it quite a bit, is the shifting rules. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. But again, maybe I'll learn to be okay with that too. I doubt I'll be okay with that one. But yeah, I'm slowly accepting most of the rule changes. A little man.
Your team was notorious, I think, for one of the first teams, the four outfielders. And
oh yeah,
it's one of I'm not going to lie to you, Jeff. It's one of the reasons I kind of wanted to shift ban, but also then again, it's just like the players today used an excuse. Like For instance, former Yankee Joey Gallo, he always used the shift excuse. He would never adjust. So it's kind of like, I'm half and half with this shift. If it incentivizes more offense, it's not necessarily a problem for me because I think baseball has an entertainment and just like a production issue, offense, entertaining, all that sort of stuff that goes along with it. Timmy, what do you think of the new rules?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff was right. The games were shorter in spring training, but I feel like the pitch clock, I'm not a fan of that at all. I was watching Max Scherzer and the Mets go at it a few weeks ago, and it just seemed like it was worsening the game. The pitch clock was hurrying batters when they were taking their at bats, and Max Scherzer didn't look too thrilled about it. It sort of was getting in his head, and I've heard from other pitchers who have not appreciated the rule change either. So I am not a fan of the pitch clock, I have to say. But I think the bigger bases, that'll make things interesting. I will say that I would like to see more steals. I think steals are a fun part of the game and something that we don't see as often these days. So the bigger bases should help in that regard. So I guess we'll see how things play out. But with the games being shortening, I'm hoping that it'll attract more fans because this is an excellent game. I love the game of baseball, and I want more fans to appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely some good points there. Shouts to Carlitos and Jeffrey in the chat. Sox, I know we've talked about this numerous amount of times, but and I know you're very much a critic of these new rules. Let us know what you think.
Yeah. I mean, it's grown on me a little bit here, these quicker games, but I'm still not a fan of the pitch clock at all. Like it feels like a completely different game out there. And it was actually nice to watch the WBC where guys are, taking their time and really playing those mind games that I realized I missed from watching spring training. But the bigger bases is the one that I'm cool with. I'm cool with more steals. It doesn't really change the game that much. It just incentivizes, taking a bag here and there. The banning the shift is absolutely ridiculous. I don't even know how that's a thing anymore. Like we talked about it before. If they allow that, it's just going to keep going. When somebody's unhappy, if they're going to change the rules again and again and again, that's the one that I'm really opposed to. But we'll see how it goes. It sucks that it's forced down our throats. We're going to have to be forced to watch it. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. And just a random debate topic, because I was having this debate in a fantasy football group chat, but somehow it got to baseball, at least this topic. Did we all at least watch the last inning of the World Baseball Classic in terms of the championship? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys know, there was a hot take by Christopher Russo, and he said the at-bat wasn't iconic between Ohtani and Trout. Personally, I agree with him. What do you guys feel about that? Because I felt Trout was overmatched by at least 200-mile-an-hour fastballs. I'm like, Trout's one of the best players in this game, but how do you just miss that? It's not like he was throwing wicked sliders all over the place. It was 2 fastballs he should have hit. But I don't think it was that iconic. I mean, you guys' thoughts?
I think the matchup itself, like the at bat itself might not have been a quality at bat, but the matchup going into it is just, it can't be better than that with 2 teammates, allegedly the 2 best players in the game facing off in the World Baseball Classic to end the game. It doesn't get better than that. You can't set a better matchup. But the at bat itself, he was overpowered. I think Ohtani's that good of a pitcher that he can go out there and strike out the greatest hitter on earth.
Timmy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to agree with you there. Like, great matchup. You have 2 teammates going at it on the world stage. Like, the whole world's watching. And you have 2 Los Angeles Angels going at it. Shohei, an absolute fireballer, and Mike Trout, one of the best hitters we've ever seen. So I think in this day and age, this generation, that was an iconic at bat with the 2 of them there. But if we're talking about all time, maybe it's not as iconic as some past historic matchups we've seen. I think for this generation, though, that's something that a lot of people are going to remember years and years from now, is seeing that in that scenario in the World Baseball Classic. So,
Jeff?
Yeah, I think the headline, the billing was maybe greater than the outcome of what we actually saw. I think there's a legitimate point there. I don't think Trout was really dialed in 100% during the World Baseball Classic. But you've got really the greatest player for Team Japan, the greatest player for Team America. I mean, it's a storybook ending, but yeah, Trout didn't put up a great at bat.
I agree with that. Shouts to LI Yankee King in the chat. There are rumors that they're tweaking the pitch clock before opening day. Apparently, they are not. Jeff Passan, I think, confirmed that yesterday or the day before. He also says the at bat was a great moment. Shouts to Tudo. Shouts to Hirsch. Li says it reminded me of Barry Bonds and Eric Gagné. At least I think that's how you pronounce his name. But obviously, going back to that Dodgers and Giants matchup. But moving slowly into the preview and all these different things. I'm going to start with Sox, even though we've gotten a little bit of a base summary before. It's always good to recite and just get the brain flowing again. And this is obviously for the rest of the panel, but I'll start with Sox. Basic description on last year's events, where you ended up, where you did, where your team placed, weaknesses of the team, and some things you learned about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we learned that we're going to trust the youth a little bit, whether or not we really want to. The Red Sox finished in last place last year. It was they won 78 games. You know, it was competitive early. The All-Star break really showed us who was going to stay healthy and who wasn't, who was tired. I think the Red Sox lost 13 out of 14 around the All-Star break, something like that, and it just dropped off afterwards. Starting pitching wasn't that bad. It was the back end of the bullpen that really hurt us last year. And there's a lot of new faces on this team. I think the outfield woes are going to not be as bad. You know, that whole Jarren Duran situation, Arroyo learning right field for the first time, dropping a few balls out there. It seems like we have a lot of talent out in the outfield now. It's just going to rely on the health of our starting pitching, which it's been a struggle for the last few years. I don't expect as bad of a record this year, but we'll see. It's a competitive division.
Real quickly before we get to Timmy, guys, also your questions, comments, they are most welcome. How much do you like Springs? This is obviously going to Jeff because he is the Tampa guy. Has he been impressive? He has been impressive to me this spring training.
Yeah, Jeffrey Springs. I love him. I expect him to be. I mean, he has been a big part of the team, and I think he's going to continue to be. He's a nice lefty for the Rays. He really impressed last year, and yeah, I mean, I like him. The Rays have a way of finding pitchers. I mean, that's, you know, and he's one of them. He didn't impress me just watching him the first few times I saw him in the big leagues, but he's grown on me. He knows what he's doing out there. He's just a real professional pitcher. So yeah, I'm high on Jeffrey Springs for sure.
Shouts to Jacob in the chat. Before we get to Timmy, I must say with the Orioles last year, I kind of thought that Brandon Hyde should have won Manager of the Year because they were like questionable at the beginning. They tried competing a little at the end, and they weren't too far away from it. And I think the Orioles got a good thing going with the youth, but obviously we'll get a little bit more deeper into that later. Base summary of what happened last year. Timmy, what happened with the Orioles?
So the Orioles, they finished 4th in the division last year, a major step up from 2021 when they had 52 wins, last year with 83 wins. So a lot of positives to take away from last season. When you win like 30 or more games compared to the last season, that's something that you have to be excited about. I think the fans in Baltimore are very excited for this upcoming season. Brandon Hyde doing a great job. He's been through the thick and thin here, and it was great to see the success that the team had. A big part of that was the younger guys you mentioned. We had Adley Rutschman come up. That was a big debut, and he had a great year. Looking forward to what he can do this season. Gunnar Henderson, he got some time towards the end of the season, and he'll be a fun infielder to watch over the years in this division. And then Kyle Stowers, he also joined the team in the outfield. So a lot of young guys on the team right now, and still a lot more guys deep in our farm system that are on the horizon. The big thing last year in terms of why the Orioles were so good was the bullpen. A lot of big surprises there. Felix Bautista, he emerged as our closer after we dealt Jorge Lopez at the deadline. So it'll be fun to see what he can do. And then we had some other guys like Cionel Perez in the bullpen do really well. But we also have Anthony Santander and Ryan Mountcastle, who are right in the middle of that lineup. Santander, you guys probably saw in the World Baseball Classic, doing pretty well for Venezuela. So a lot of positives for the Orioles right now, and I'm excited for sure.
Jeff, what happened with the Rays last year?
Well, the Rays finished 3rd in the division, made the wild card, and had the 2-game sweep against the Guardians, in which the Rays put out a total of 1 run in 24 innings. And appropriately, the pitchers only gave up 3 runs in the 2 games. So, I think it's pretty clear where the team weaknesses lie, and that's they're a little offensively challenged. Last year, this team was ravaged with injury all season. Really, the only regular who didn't miss a pretty substantial amount of time was Randy Arozarena. Yandy Diaz, not counting Taylor Walls, who really shouldn't be playing 142 games. Yandy Diaz was next, third on the team with 137 games. They just weren't getting their best players on the field. Wander Franco was out for half the season. Brandon Lau was in and out all year with back problems. And those are 2 good hitters. Manuel Margot also missed about half the season with a pretty serious knee injury. So the weakness, they were 11th in the American League in runs scored, 3rd in ERA. They need to score more runs. That's what we learned. They didn't do much to add to the offense this offseason. So it's a hope for health and more production from some of the young guys is really what we're looking at in Tampa Bay.
So I'll offer my input a little bit on my New York Yankees. So the first half, first of all, I was very pessimistic, and I kind of still am. I'm not going to lie to you guys. The Josh Donaldson trade happened. We're like, what in the hell are you doing? Then we move into spring training. Obviously, the lockout happened, so it was like 15 games of spring training. Moving to the regular season, they have this awesome start, and then they face Houston, and then that's where they got their shit absolutely wrecked. They started falling off. A lot of people suspect that Aaron Boone kind of stopped managing at that point, and that's when things started to rock the boat a little bit, and they almost lost that division lead. I think we were down to like 5-game lead after having just a huge lead in the AL East, and then you don't really play that well. You kind of just skid by the Cleveland Guardians in the first round, and then you absolutely get wrecked by Houston in the next round. And then, why my pessimism still stays is because Brian Cashman was brought back. No changes were made. Carlos Rodon, yeah, I like the signing. He's now on the IL. A couple injuries faced the New York Yankees at this point. Aaron Hicks and Josh Donaldson have not been traded. So as much as some Yankee fans will try to paint over that with some positivity, I will tell you how it is, and I will tell you my straight-up opinion. So we'll see where the Yankees obviously fall and all that sort of stuff. L.I. Yankee King says Randy Arozarena earned his nickname some motherfucker named Brandy during the World Baseball Classic. I must say, he kills the Yankees, but I admire Randy Arozarena. I really do. But we'll start out with Jeff again. And this is, once again, going into questions more about acquisitions, a little bit of an offseason type of thing. Right out of the box, in my opinion, the Rays are always seen as not the most exciting team because they don't make the moves. Why should outside baseball fans be intrigued to look at this Rays team and say, hey, they'll be top 3 in the division this year?
I think the main thing, the Rays actually spent more money on their highest priced free agent in franchise history this offseason. And it was Zach Eflin from the Phillies, a whopping $40 million over 3 years. So that was the biggest free agent acquisition in franchise history right there. So that tells you something about the Rays in the offseason. Really, the biggest thing is a lot of their young players missed a lot of time. Brandon Lau's an all-star player. He was inconsistent when he played because he couldn't get his back straight. Allegedly, that's all correct. Manuel Margot was off to a great start before he had a big knee injury. And Wander Franco, still has as much upside as any player in the entire league. So I think the Rays are really just crossing their fingers, saying those 3 guys healthy, productive. Randy Arozarena hopefully keeps some of that momentum from the World Baseball Classic going. He's a pretty streaky hitter off and on. He's always there in the big moments, but hopefully he can be there throughout the year. A little more consistently. Yandy Diaz had a tremendous season last year. We just need to hope for the same thing. The rotation, the pitching staff, the bullpen, just keep on doing what you're doing. Tyler Glasnow came back from Tommy John surgery at the very end. He pitched very well, and a couple times at the end of last season. He's out till at least sometime in May. Not a serious injury, allegedly, and the Rays are actually optimistic that actually will help limit his innings this year because they're very concerned about adding innings to a guy who has had a lot of injuries throughout his career. But when he is on the mound, he is dominant. So I think the Rays are just hoping they're going to have injury luck in their favor. They also have a couple young guys, Luke Raley and Josh Lowe, who both look like they're going to make the team, having great springs. Josh Lowe was, they traded Austin Meadows because they thought Josh Lowe was ready to play every day, and he crapped the bed big time. He showed a little bit of promise at certain points in the season until he let, a home run bounce off his face. So he just kept drawing attention to himself for bad reasons consistently. Hopefully he's over whatever that was. The Rays are just looking for some of these young guys to stay healthy, produce, and look out for Jose Siri in center field replacing Kevin Kiermaier. They like his offensive upside. He's the only one. He hit a home run in the playoffs last year. He's the only Gray who actually, scored in the postseason.
Shout out to Angry John in the chat. He says, sub panel and chat. Great win for the Rangers tonight, but the Knicks had to ruin it. Who else is ready for baseball season? I am, to an extent. Yankees didn't get swept in the ALCS. We would have shown up to get swept. They did get swept, but sure. I don't know what that was supposed to mean. Moving on to Sox. Once again, I know we've discussed this a lot on this show. But as we know, the Red Sox pitching has been pretty much a mess for the last few years, whether it's talent that's brought in or the development. Does the lack of starting pitcher moves, letting go Michael Wacha, and you could obviously factor in whatever they added to the bullpen, does that concern you a lot? Do you believe in the youth? What do you think in there in terms of pitching?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic, especially in terms of pitching than I was last year. I think their plan is probably about a year late, and we're finally getting a chance to see what it's really looking like. You bring in Kenley Jansen after all that shit with Matt Barnes went down, and I guess they just don't trust him or whatever it is. But I wish Matt Barnes the best in Miami. I think he's going to be really good down there, by the way. But you're letting go of 16 wins from their starters with Wacha and Evaldi. Just those two guys are gone. How are you going to replace that? You need the young guys to step up, and the two veterans with Kluber and Sale, those are going to be the key. Like, I need them to be healthy. I need them to be there at the top in the middle of the rotation to really set it in stone what this rotation is going to look like. Kenley Jansen's going to show us like what it's. We haven't had a solid closer for a long time in Boston. I think he might be that guy. I think he can go out there and get 30, 35, 40 saves, and the pitching staff won't be as bad as it was last year. But, yeah, we talked about it a lot. You let go of those guys. Wacha was huge last year. I mentioned a lot that I got to see him pitch in person, a complete game shutout in Anaheim. That was awesome. But he won 11, 12 games last year, went 12-1. We'll miss him a lot, but the young guys are going to step up. Schreiber, and I'm excited to see Jansen in the bullpen.
Yeah, definitely. So first out of two questions for Timmy. What are your thoughts on the minor additions? Well, they may be minor to the outside, but maybe to the inside, they're a little bit more, I would say, meaningful. What do you think of the additions of Kyle Gibson, obviously getting back Kyle Givens after a year with, I believe, Chicago, and then a solid role player in Adam Frazier, who didn't have the best of seasons in Seattle last year, but I wanted him the year prior, the year the Yankees traded for Joey Gallo. But what are your thoughts on those additions to start?
Yeah, I was honestly pretty excited with what Mike Elias did this offseason in terms of pitching. Kyle Gibson, I think that was a great addition. He comes over from the Rangers, and he'll slot in as either the one or two guy in our 5-man rotation, and he'll be fun to watch. Probably it's yet to be decided, but it's likely that he'll be the opening day starter, I would imagine. So very excited with his experience that he brings to the table. And then Cole Irvin, who was acquired through trade with the Athletics, that was very exciting to see as well. Younger than Gibson, but still has a lot of innings under his belt and has put up some pretty good numbers over in Oakland over the years. So he'll slide in at the front end of the rotation. Without John Means for the first half of the year, he's coming back from Tommy John surgery. Those two will need to be very eat up a lot of innings for the Orioles. Very important for them to be able to do that. And then Michael Givens, that was a great addition as well. Him coming up through the minors with the Orioles and then spending, I believe, the first 4 or 5 years of his MLB career in Baltimore. It's great to have him back. Very strong resume that he has. Bounced around a few different teams before returning to the Orioles this offseason. So he'll solidify that bullpen, especially with the injuries that we have at the moment. Dylan Tate is expected to start the year on the injured list out of the bullpen, and Felix Bautista, he's coming back from a minor offseason injury. So we'll need Michael Givens to sort of steady that bullpen in the first month of the season. And then bring in Adam Frazier. He was infielder. Well, he can really play infield and outfield for the Orioles. That was an interesting move. Frazier, he's around 30 years old, so a lot of experience under his belt as well. An all-star in 2021, but as you mentioned, a little bit of a down year for him last year. It'll be interesting to see how he fits into the equation because we have a lot of younger infielders who are on the horizon coming up, like Jordan Westberg and Joey Ortiz. So to see how he earns his playing time among Gunnar Henderson, Ramon Urias, and Jorge Mateo will be very interesting for me to watch. And then we also brought in a couple other free agents on minor league deals, Ryan O'Hearn from the Royals and Lewin Diaz from the Marlins. Those were some guys who were coming into battle for that backup first base position. So it's been an exciting spring training. All those guys competing for that backup first base spot have done really well in spring training, both defensively and offensively. So I was overall pretty happy with the Orioles offseason.
And then the second part of that question, in my outside opinion, and I've talked to like several Oriole fans, I think the Orioles need at least one outside superstar to be up with the big boys in the division, even though like the Rays have it mostly as homegrown. The Blue Jays have it as homegrown. The Yankees, obviously, Judge. And then, they acquired Giancarlo Stanton a few years ago. Do you feel the same way that they need to get a bat from the outside to really be more competitive? Or do you think that the young cats are being underrated?
I think there's a little bit of both there. I think the rest of the league doesn't really know about all the young guys that the Orioles have coming up. There's guys such as Colton Cowser, who was our first round pick in 2021, who's really been lighting it up in spring training and in his 2 minor league seasons to this point. Connor Norby, another younger player to watch there. So the league really hasn't seen all the Orioles cards, but I do think that a nice free agent signing like a superstar would be a great addition to this team because as we've seen with the other teams at the top of the league, they've had a mixture of younger players coming up through their system, but also some big free agent acquisitions additionally. So if the Orioles can find a way to maybe acquire a player through a trade involving prospects, like a big name player that we receive from our prospects, that'd be ideal. So I would, to answer your question, I would appreciate a big superstar to combine with our prospects.
Yeah, definitely. So real quickly, I'm just going to go ahead before we head into our more spring training subject. I'm going to go to Carlito's question. Question, friends, which team do you see as going to be the disappointment this season? Which one or more are going to surprise and are the strongest to win the World Series? So I'm going to leave World Series a little bit for later, but I think it is a good question. Which teams could be disappointing? Which teams could be, one of the surprise teams? I'll start with Sox and then I'll move down the panel.
As far as honestly, as far as the disappointment, especially in our division, I think the Red Sox have that potential. We're hindering a lot on the health of our bullpen and our starters right now. And if that starts to crumble, I don't know what direction they're going to go. We need Chris Sale to be healthy. It seems like every time he leaves his house, he breaks a bone in his hand or something like that. As far as a surprise, I think Baltimore could do it again. I in our prediction show, I didn't have them as high yesterday, but if it's a surprise, I think Baltimore could get up there and contend a little bit.
Timmy?
Yeah. As far as someone or a team that's going to disappoint, I would probably have to say the Red Sox. They have, I think it's the starting pitching for them, as you mentioned. Corey Kluber, he was a solid offseason addition to that, but Chris Sale, you never know when he's going to be healthy. And James Paxton, he's also a guy who's injury prone as well over the years. So if they can stay healthy, I think the Red Sox, they'll be able to compete with the rest of the division, of course. But that's always the question, I feel like, in their starting rotation. Rafael Devers, Obviously, he's one of the best in the league right now, and he always brings an exciting bat. And I've heard some other good things about Alex Verdugo doing really well in spring training, and high expectations for him. So I don't think there's a high chance that the Red Sox flop or anything like that, but they would be the one team in this division that I would be a little like to watch out for them in that regard.
Jeff.
I'll try to be different, although I think I probably have Boston 5th in the division, honestly. So yeah, I do think they'll probably disappoint. I'll go to my own backyard and say that the Rays have a big potential to disappoint, and even if they finish with a similar outcome as last season, make the postseason, just barely. If their offense, is in the bottom 5 in the American League again, that's disappointing. And their approach this offseason was a failure, bottom line. So there's a decent chance that even if they have better injury luck, they still have a bad offense. And in that situation, even if they do sneak into the postseason, I'll give them the crown of being the biggest disappointment for being so close, but not being able to make that one or two little moves needed offensively to get more run production. Surprise is a tough one because I feel like Baltimore kind of showed their little secret the second half of last season. They'd be the easy answer, but because no one's going to be surprised with the Yankees, Blue Jays, or Rays, and even the Red Sox. Yeah, I mean, it's the Red Sox. So the Orioles really are the only team who can surprise, but I feel like they already revealed it. So I don't know if there's much potential for a big surprise team this season.
Yeah, definitely. Just going to reference some comments real quickly. LI Yankee King says, in the AL East, the strongest team is the Blue Jays. The disappointment will be the Rays with a record of 81-81, in my opinion. Very precise. Remember my predictions from last night's show? Angry John says Jays, Yankees, Rays, Red Sox, Orioles. And then LI Yankee says, John, we have the same top two, but I say the Orioles 3rd, Rays 4th, and the Red Sox are 5th. So going back to Jeff on this one regarding spring training, I was doing, for another channel that I contribute to, NYY News TV, I was doing a live stream with my boss. And there was this guy that, I didn't know who particularly he was. Want to ask about him a little bit more because it seems like, he's kind of making his way up a little bit. And he hit 2 home runs against the Yankees. And you guys gave up G-Man Choi this offseason. How close is Curtis Mead to the big leagues?
I think we'll see him this year, not on opening day. But I do think we will see Curtis Mead this year, and I think he's a big part of the future. And we'll see. He's going to start in Durham at AAA, and I'm excited to see how his season progresses. The Rays do not like to rush prospects, and Curtis Mead's got a lot of pressure on his back because he's from Australia, and they don't produce a lot of hitters. So, I mean, he's a pretty big name in Australia. So I do not think the Rays are going to rush him whatsoever. They want to make sure he's ready. He's 22. I mean, I'm a big fan, and I think he's going to contribute at the big league level at some point this year. But to date, he's only played 20 games at the AAA level in his career. So I think he needs a little more seasoning. But there are going to be injuries, and he's a guy who can play in the infield. And the Rays don't have a ton of infield depth, at least not that can hit. Really behind the starting infield, you're looking at Taylor Walls, and Daniel Robertson was a non-roster addition who, those are just utility guys who have a glove but no bat. So if there is a significant injury in the infield, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mead come up if it's, a couple months into the season.
Yeah, definitely. And then pitching this one to Sox, we talked last year, and you seemed, you didn't have much faith in your team. It was just going down as, obviously they went under 500 and then they got eliminated. Red Sox, they started out, I believe it was 9-0 in spring training. Does that say more about the youth, the vets on the team, or a mix? And if so, please elaborate.
Yeah, I think it says a little bit about the youth, which, you mentioned I wasn't too positive about it going into last year, but There's a lot of guys that have played well this spring, and I think it is a good mix because you had the optimism of Chris Sale coming back. He had that game where he struck out the side in 2 straight innings and coming off the mound laughing and his teammates laughing with him. We haven't seen that side of Chris Sale in a long time, so I was excited to see that. And then guys are hitting the ball. You mentioned Alex Verdugo having a good spring, and I'm just excited to see the youth actually come through with these guys being healthy. I appreciate what Tristan Casas has been doing. He had a lot of at bats in spring training. Yu Chang hasn't really stepped up that well, but as far as the prospects, I believe in the pitchers. I think the guys like Kluber and the guys like Sale are going to be healthy and be there for them and carry it through. So I'm definitely more excited than I was last year. That's for sure.
Definitely. I'll start with Timmy on this next general question. Which positions are being battled for, and who's winning those battles as of right now as we hone closer to opening day?
One of the biggest battles in Baltimore right now is the battle for that top bench spot on the team. Terrin Vavra, who some of you guys may not know, is a young infielder that the Orioles actually acquired for Michael Givens back in 2020 when the Orioles dealt Michael Givens to the Colorado Rockies. Vavra came over, and now he's in that conversation for that utility spot that the Orioles like to have. So he's been battling it out with Ryan O'Hearn and Franchi Cordero, Lewin Diaz. And because Vavra is on the younger side and can play very good defense, play in the outfield and middle infield, the Orioles and Brandon Hyde, they really like what he can do. And he's put up some very good numbers at the plate this spring. So he's leading the charge there. In starting pitching, it looks to be that Grayson Rodriguez, one of the top prospects in the system, will break camp for the opening day roster in the rotation. He's been exciting to watch. He's been battling with some veterans such as Austin Voth and Tyler Wells, who was a Rule 5 pick a few years back. So that's been an interesting battle there for those past or the last few spots in the rotation. And then in the outfield, we've seen Kyle Stowers battle it out with a couple of veterans. Nomar Mazara was brought in, and it looks like Nomar Mazara will be starting in AAA. It looks like Stowers, who has a great bat, can really hit the ball out of the park. He'll be that 4th outfielder for the Orioles. And Brian McKenna, that's an interesting one for me. He brings a lot of speed to the table as a 4th outfielder, but he has a little bit of inconsistency at the plate. So it's unsure to me whether he'll start in AAA or with the big league squad this year.
Yeah, so a couple more comments to get to. Brad, who lives in Australia, says Meade is best pure hitter out of Australia since Dave Nilsson. It will be Yankees, Blue Jays, Red Sox, Orioles, Rays. Please keep Givens on your roster as long as he's not a Met anymore, of course, coming from the Met fan Angry John. Best all-around player out of Australia is Robbie Glendening with the Royals organization. The only Australian I remember, obviously, Curtis Meade, I didn't even know he's from Australia before this conversation, is Graham Lloyd. That's the only Australian baseball player that I know. But I could be obviously enlightened with a few more. But I'll go to Jeff on the next one. Positions that are being battled for and who's winning those battles right now.
Right now, probably the most interesting one with the Rays, because again, it's not a lot of change really. Is probably with Tyler Glasnow starting the year on the injured list. That 5th starter spot, I think they're going to actually have a 5th starter probably, and it's between Yanni Chirinos, Luis Patino, and Josh Fleming. And when they need, and they're going to need a 5th starter if they do plan on actually having a rotation. Yanni Chirinos is the guy who's, in my opinion, the best candidate for that job. I think he's going to win it. He's an interesting guy. He came back last season after he pitched in 3 games in 2020, missed entire 2021 due to injury, and came back to pitch 2 games last year. So he has pitched a total of 5 games in the last 3 years. So he's been battling to get back out there. He's a guy who I loved, back in 2019, really last time he was consistently out on the mound. So I hope he gets that 5th spot. I think he's leading the way right now. The other interesting one is Luke Raley, who is he's out of options. He's got an OPS over 1,200 in spring training, 5 home runs. He's hitting really well. He's on the left-handed side of the plate, which is nice because there's a lot of platoon opportunities. So I'm very curious to see. They've also started playing him at first base. The Rays notoriously want to teach you to play multiple positions so they can get you on the field. So seeing how much Luke Raley forces his way into the lineup, especially against right-handed pitching, he and Josh Lowe are, I think, going to kind of be battling for that platoon spot in both, right field with Manuel Margot, at first base with Yandy Diaz potentially going over to third, and Isaac Paredes being on the bench. And then at DH too, Harold Ramirez shouldn't be starting against right-handed pitching, only left-handed pitching. So one of those guys is probably going to platoon at the DH spot as well. I would lean towards Raley if he's not out at first base. So those are kind of not really very exciting battles in Rays camp. And Brad pointed out Grant Balfour, great Australian pitcher, helped get the Rays to their first World Series.
Got a question for Timmy. How do you think Grayson Rodriguez will do this year?
That's a great question. Grayson Rodriguez, he has some electric stuff, can really throw the ball fast, tops out at 100, 101, I think. And he's had some injury past. Last season, he was battling an injury for a few months of the season, but he came back towards the end, was with AAA for, I believe, all of last year, and he just needs to put it together. I think the Orioles will have an innings limit on him early on in the season, so you won't be seeing too many extended starts in the month of April for him. But I think as the season gets going, and hopefully as he gains more confidence, you'll be able to see some great production out of him, be able to eat up innings and rack up a lot of strikeouts, because he definitely has some elite pitches in his bag. So Grayson Rodriguez, he'll be fun to watch for sure, and excited to see what he can do.
Got a couple of more comments as well, and this is another good question. Who is everyone's favorite rookie on each team? Booyah, are you talking about every team or just our teams? I'll start out until he clarifies. I'll start out with our individual teams, like the favorite rookie. So I'll go first. This one's tough for me because everybody touts Anthony Volpe, but I'm kind of excited for Oswald Peraza, at least, to get a full season. He had 306 last year in limited opportunity. Sox, favorite rookie on the Sox?
Tristan Casas. I think he has a good chance of getting Rookie of the Year if he can stay healthy. Watch out for him hitting some bombs this year.
Timmy?
I'm going to have to go with Gunnar Henderson. He's on a lot of people's watch for Rookie of the Year too. So he brings that bat and a nice glove over it. I think we'll see him at short and third this year. I'm not really sure exactly what position the Orioles will have him playing at the most, but he's electric on the diamond in that infield, and also with the bat shows a lot of power. So Gunnar Henderson for me.
Jeff?
I kind of want to cheat and go with Meade for this one, even though he's not going to start. The Rays don't really have a lot of guys who are rookie eligible who are going to contribute. I'll throw a name out there, Rule 5 pick in the bullpen, Kevin Kelly. It sounds like he's going to make the back end of the bullpen, and if the Rays like a guy in their bullpen, they're usually right. So I'll throw him out there.
Eli says, I don't see the Yankees winning the division. The roster is tooled lethargic way too reliant on station-to-station baseball. That's an explanation. Grant Balfour, Liam Hendricks, both Aussies. Shouts to Armand. Angry John is going to love Zach Britton and D-Rob in the 8th and 9th this year. John says he would rather donate his eyeballs to the blind. Peter Moylan, another Aussie. Havana, Angry John. Yep, our teams. Question, which player on your teams do you think will disappoint? Ooh, that's another good question. I'll start first. I mean, Who I think, you know what? I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna say Giancarlo Stanton. I think a lot of people overrate him on the Yankees. He made his first All-Star appearance as a Yankee last year, got hurt. And I think he's kind of dwindling down with age. And I think the Yankees at some point will have to have a replacement plan for him. But I think Giancarlo Stanton will be disappointing. I'll go back to Jeff on the disappointing player.
I guess if I have to pick one, as far as who's actually disappointing and has some expectations, I'll go with Isak Paredes. He's the player they got in exchange for Austin Meadows. He ended up tied for the team lead with 20 home runs last year, and he would go on some tears. He had a 3 home run game against the Yankees last year. So it looks like the Rays are going to rely on him for a lot of at-bats. And, he's only 23 years old last year, hit 20 home runs. He also had a 304 on base percentage, 205 batting average. Kind of signs of a guy who he's boomer bust, and maybe some holes in his swing may have been exposed at certain points last year. Again, we're dealing with mostly a similar team from last year. A guy who actually has maybe expectations to improve is Paredes. So I'll throw him out there.
Timmy.
I'm going to say Jorge Mateo as far as that goes, as a player who may disappoint. Mateo last year, a lot of stolen bases for him. Him and Mullins were up among league leaders in stolen bases, which was pretty cool to see. But with the bat, that's a big question mark for Jorge Mateo. He does great in the field, but at the plate, he strikes out a lot, which is concerning and something that he really needs to improve on. And he has that power. It's just a lot of swing and miss with Mateo. And so it'll be interesting to see what he can do. I think that the stress, he'll be under a lot of pressure with the young infielders coming up, and he'll be under a lot of stress there in the middle infield as the younger prospects are right there. So he'll really have to really surprise a lot of people and really increase his game, and he can't be striking out as much as he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, to add on a little bit about Mateo, I mean, he just seems like an outcast with all this Orioles youth coming up. I mean, I remember Mateo because obviously he was a former Yankees prospect traded for Sonny Gray, I believe. And then he just started fluttering around the league. And, I don't think he has like a great baseball IQ. I've seen him in like situations. He's a good threat on the bases. Just sometimes he just doesn't have that IQ. So I would say he's a little bit of an outcast, but I definitely agree with you, Timmy. Sox, what's one player that could disappoint this year?
I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm thinking it's going to be Nick Pivetta. The guy, he was about 500 last year. And with all this talk about the starting rotation, I think he might fall off a little bit with Bayo and Whitlock and Houck chomping at the bit. The guy had almost a 5 ERA last year, and the Red Sox were a part of a lot of comeback wins early on. So I think that was part of it. His record probably shouldn't have been as good as it was, even at 500. So watch out for Nick Pivetta to kind of fall off a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to jump back to the questions real quick, and then we'll go to the chat's questions as well as we slowly, go into the season preview a little bit more and edge out of the spring training subject. Which prospects are shining and which ones are not this far in spring training? I'll start with Sox.
Yeah, a lot of guys, swung the bat early in spring training. I like what Fitzgerald was doing. Obviously, Rafaela came in and had a couple good hits. He's the one that's kind of disappointing this season so far in spring training. He's only hitting 207, and he's played in about 15 games. So I would have liked to see a little bit more out of him. Again, Tristan Casas had over 40 at-bats. I think he's hitting 340 in spring training. The guy is just hitting the hell out of the ball, which is amazing to see. And then you have the catchers, which Alfaro, not really you're the youngest guy in the world, but he's hitting over 556 in 8 games played this spring. So he's really chomping at the bit to be the catcher with Reese McGuire and Connor Wong. So as far as pitchers, I was excited to see Brian Bayo. He made only one start. Winkowski played well too, but I wanted to see a little bit more out of Bayo. I was happy to see what Nico Goodrum was able to do as well. A lot of young guys out there. Red Sox had about 45 guys play in spring so far this year. So I just like to see what Alfaro's doing as a catcher. I'm happy to see the competitiveness at that position.
Timmy, which prospects are shining and which ones are not?
Colton Cowser, the outfielder, the first-round draft pick from 2021, he's been really, really exciting this spring training. Showing his power off. He had a monster blast, I believe, 476 feet the other day. So that was spectacular. And the average is way up for him right now. He's shown signs of this in his 2 minor league seasons. Last year, he had 19 home runs, and his average was right around 270, I believe. So he's an exciting player. He's right on the horizon. Played ended his year at AAA last year, so the Orioles could call him up possibly in April, maybe May. I think at the latest, end of May. So he's right there. He's been very exciting in spring.
And then Jeff.
Yeah, really. Shining has really been the offensive prospects. Tristan Gray, an infielder, in 37 at bats. He's got a 1205 OPS. Kyle Manzardo, another infielder, really kind of had a big rise last year in the prospect rankings. He's impressed. You mentioned Curtis Mead. He showed some pop. He's only got 22 at bats in spring training, but he showed off some pop. And really, the only one that sticks out to me as kind of being a disappointment is Jonathan Aranda, a guy who honestly I thought was going to contribute at the major league level last year. Didn't look quite ready. He's had a pretty mediocre. I mean, he's 2 for 16 in spring training, so it's not been a good spring training for him. He was a guy who I think I would have projected to make the roster before spring training, and it does not look like that's going to happen to me.
Go to the chat a little bit. Li says disappointing players. As far as the Yankees go, DJ LeMahieu, well, you kind of have a little bit of a. I have to enlighten our panel a little bit, and maybe Sox knows this better than the bottom 2 guys do. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know, but Li Yankee King just does not like DJ LeMahieu. I don't know why, but it's a common thread. Orioles, Adam Frazier. Red Sox, Kenley Jansen. Rays, you can't name any of the players. I would like to see your Blue Jays in your opinion, but you have them winning the division.
Hey, all I gotta say is Kenley Jansen's got some fire under him for the first time. You know, a new jersey, a new city to play for, and the Red Sox haven't had a closer in a long time. They're telling this guy that he is going to be the guy. So the only way I see a disappointment from him is if guys are expecting him to go out there and get something crazy like 50 saves or something. But he's going to be a backbone of that bullpen. There's no question about it.
Okay. What player on your teams have been a big surprise this spring training? So I'll start. Andre Chaparro, who I actually got the honor of meeting back in 2019 when he was with the Staten Island Yankees. He's just been, I mean, his defense is not great. He's probably a DH at the next level. Maybe a first baseman if he could work on his picking. He's not really mobile, but he's been hitting shots left and right. Probably one of the how do I put this? Team leaders in home runs alongside Jason Dominguez. And, he's also one of those players, and I respect the hell out of this. He's one of those players that wants to hit for a good average. He said, I don't really want to be one of those power guys. It's all or nothing. And that's really good for the game. It's really good for the game. So that's at least my opinion in terms of the biggest surprise. I mean, Jason Dominguez has also lit it up, but he's in the minors. He's going to be starting out in the minors, which a lot of Yankee fans aren't necessarily happy about. Any surprise? I know some of these questions may be a little bit redundant, but any particular surprises from any of the camps below? I'll start with Jeff.
No, a couple names I mentioned. The first guy that was brought up in the chat, Jeffrey Springs, 14 innings, 24 strikeouts, no runs. I mean, he's going to be part of the rotation, but he looks really ready for the season to start. And the other guy I mentioned, Luke Raley, really raking and has earned his way onto the team. So that's about it.
Timmy?
This spring, Austin Hayes, he's really lit it up with the bat, 4 home runs and hitting 364 over 33 at bats. So he was a guy who was a slight disappointment last year, 250 average for the Orioles. And to keep that outfield spot that he currently holds, this is what he needed, a great spring for him. And if he can carry that with him to Baltimore for the regular season, that'd be phenomenal. I'm a big fan of Hayes, so I'd love to see him succeed and be part of that outfield with Cedric Mullins and Anthony Santander. So that's exactly what he needed to do this spring.
And then Sox.
Yeah, man. I mentioned it earlier. A lot of guys played well. Hamilton fighting for that catcher spot. I mentioned Tristan Casas. I can't say his name enough. It just sounds better every time it rolls off the tongue. But how about Jorge Alfaro? Hitting 10 for 18, 556 in 7 games in spring training, and then going to the World Baseball Classic and having to prove himself there for Red Sox management to decide if he was going to make the team. And he went over there and balled as well. So I just love to see catchers really balling here, because that's a tough position in the MLB to have some consistency with. So I love Jorge Alfaro hitting 556 in spring.
Yeah, LI Yankee King says the Blue Jays' most disappointing player will be Brandon Belt. That was kind of a weird acquisition for them, to be honest, when you have all those young cats. Actually, I do like DJ Mayhew. It's just the age is catching up to him. That was 4 years ago with the batting title, which I'm going to agree with John here. And DJ is the lord ass around the bases. I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of players on the Yankees that are probably slower than DJ LeMahieu on the bases, but I think it's I have a hard time believing LI, because you're a big Gleyber Torres stan. What is up, Jets Best Mess? I'll start a couple of comments because we'll save that as we get into the preview. And once again, some of these questions may be a little redundant, but I'm still going to go with them anyway. Let's start with Jeff. What are some reasons outside baseball fans should be looking in and saying this team has a shot at making noise?
Well, the Rays are never a team that has real high national preseason expectations, because they never make the splashy move in the offseason. But they're little kids in the big boy division. They always have been. And, I think there's a philosophy that I get around baseball, that the Rays are this cute little small market team that plays in a crappy stadium, and at any point this bubble is going to burst. But I just look, I mean, they've had a few bad seasons between 2008 and now. I don't think it's just like a bubble that's going to burst. I think this is a legitimately successful organization. The front office knows what it's doing. And they're just a scrappy little team, and they got a lot of young pitchers who have, unlimited potential. So, hey, who doesn't want to root for the little guy when you're battling in a division with the Yankees and the Red Sox, for crying out loud? You got to root for one of the other 3 teams, right? So, I think the Rays have the pitching to win postseason series better than any other team in this division. They do need to have some offense, but I do think they have the potential at the top of the rotation, in the back end of the bullpen, to be in better position to win with their pitching come postseason time. I expect another Cy Young caliber type season from Shane McClanahan and Tyler Glasnow assuming he's out there. This is just a strong team, and I think they're going to maybe focus a little more on running this year. So, yeah, that's they're just a smart little clucky team that hasn't gone away for quite a while. And I don't think any other team in the division really likes the Rays, and that says a lot about the Rays. So,
if the Rays spend top money, they would be the Astros 2.0. But for the love of God, move out of the Trop.
Yeah, I mean, they can't really. The players can't control where they play, and they've been trying to get out of the Trop. Ownership has, it's a messy situation. That's we could do 2-hour podcast just about that, but I won't bore you with local politics.
Timmy, same question applies. Why should outside fans looking in say that your team has a shot at making noise?
Well, if you look at what the Orioles did between 2021 and 2022, 31 more wins last season, I think that should tell you that this team has some hope. The rebuild, like 5 years in the making, some tough times and struggles over the years, but the Orioles, I think they're in contention this year, no doubt in my mind, with the number 1 farm system in baseball by many different publications, and you have Adley Rutschman, who had almost a full season under his belt now. You bring in Kyle Gibson and Cole Irvin. with the bullpen being great last year too. I think it's a great mixture for success for this team right now. And it's a tough division that the Orioles compete in for sure with all your guys' teams. But I think the Orioles can make some noise this year, and things are looking good for them.
Same question applies to Sox. Why should outside baseball fans looking in say that this Red Sox team has a shot at making noise? And then I'm also going to combine that with John's question. This question is for the Pepsi hater. Have you been happy with the Red Sox ownership in recent years?
So first of all, I think the two things that jump out to me are the division record last year was not great. I don't think the Red Sox are going to stoop down to that level. I think it's going to be more competitive within the division, which would have turned things around last year, wouldn't have been in last place. And then the other thing we're riding on is the health of the pitchers. I think if the Red Sox pitching stays healthy, their offense is going to carry them. There's a lot of studs with Justin Turner, Rafael Devers, Kike Hernandez, Alex Verdugo, guys that can really hit the ball. And I think it's you have to have that in this division, and they're really going to step up to the plate this year. And as far as Pepsi, it absolutely stinks. The Red Sox ownership, not as much. I think it does stink a little bit, but not as much as Pepsi.
Sox, you never fail to disappoint. That's what I could say. I'll start with Sox again and then move around. What are the reasons to be negative about your team?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing is the question marks with the back end of the bullpen. Like I said, we mentioned it multiple times here tonight. The starting rotation, the health has to be there, but you're really relying a lot on Kenley Jansen, and I'm putting my faith in him. But things start going wrong like they did with Barnes. I thought he was their guy, and the Red Sox just turned the page on him and said, "No, we want you out of here." So I really hope that the Red Sox can give some leads to the back end of that bullpen so that they don't have so many pressure situations. I think that's going to really be the difference maker if the season unravels or not.
So real quickly, before I move on to the rest of the panel, since I didn't really headline my own team in terms of positives and negatives. Positives, Aaron Judge is back for another few years. Will he hit 50 home runs? Probably not. But hey, listen, he's still probably the head honcho of the offense. DJ LeMahieu, he's getting healthy, which is really good. You got the young kids coming up in Anthony Volpe or Oswald Peraza. Either one, both of them should be playing, honestly. The negative is the injuries that have attacked us so far. Carlos Rodon is out probably till I think April, May. Harrison Bader, the same thing, which means Aaron Hicks is going to have a shot in the outfield. If IKF or Gleyber Torres isn't traded, that's a little bit of a negative as well. And, it's kind of stereotypical, but it's the damn truth where the Yankees always find a way to be up in the division no matter what. Kind of the same thing happened last year where they had this glorious start. And then the stupid decisions of the front office combined with the manager, that's what's negative. So just a little in and out in terms of positive and negative for the New York Yankees. And then I'll go to Timmy for the reasons to be possibly negative about the Baltimore Orioles.
Well, last year, the Orioles bullpen was absolutely fantastic. And it's going to be hard for them to repeat that success this season. Cionel Perez, Felix Bautista, even Joey Crabel, who no one really had heard of before, they were all very, very dominant as well. I think it's going to be very tough for the Orioles to bring back that level of pitching in the bullpen. But we'll see. We'll see with that. But if there's one position group on the team that I think could be disappointing this year, it's going to be the bullpen, because it's just hard with how great they were last year. It's going to be very hard to repeat that success, especially in this division and with the schedule that the Orioles have this year.
Shout out to Jets Mess for sharing us out on the Twitter platform. Much appreciated. I'll go to Jeff. What are some, and I probably know the answer to this a little bit already. What are some of the reasons to be negative about the Tampa Bay Rays?
Run production. Again, if they're right that, all it was is health and these guys bounce back, then they're going to look like geniuses. But if they're wrong, it's going to be, there was a stretch last year where you're seeing guys like Taylor Walls get over 450 plate appearances. Brett Phillips had over 200 plate appearances. Vidal Brujan had quite a few. Yu Chang, just you name them. It's like these are not major league hitters. They're not, and they were at times hitting seemingly, 4 in a row in the Rays lineup through parts of the season. So they don't have, although they do have some young guys close in the minors, run production. That's a big reason to be wary of the Rays.
Yeah, definitely. So LI says the buyers and sellers out of the division will be the buyers, the Blue Jays, the sellers, the Rays, the Red Sox. I don't think that the Red Sox, maybe. The sellers, the Rays, I don't think so. They usually like to build themselves back up. Bit of both, Yankees, Orioles. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Negatives for the Yankees, Aaron Boone, but I could see Rodon and Bader will be back by May. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Going into this player specifics, I know we talked about the players that could disappoint a little bit. Which players need a bounce back season? And I'm going to start with my Yankees and, of course, move down the panel or up the panel. Josh Donaldson, if he's going to play at third base, he needs to be more powerful. And listen, I didn't like the trade, but for what he hit, 220 last year, 15 home runs, I could at least get on board. And once again, I hate the trade, don't like the player. But if you're hitting 15 home runs, at least hit 20 to 25. And I know, yes, 37, 38 years old, you really don't do that. But there's no reason for him just to be on the team for defense. Aaron Hicks, I mean, how low can the bar go for this guy? The Yankees still haven't moved him, but he needs to have some sort of a bounce back for this offense to at least take shape other than Aaron Judge. And then finally, I'd probably say Isaiah Kiner-Falefa just as a depth piece. I don't see him getting traded. I would also like to see Gleyber Torres have more consistency because in the first half he lit it up like the rest of the team. Second half, apparently the rumor was, well, he hurt himself in trade talks, so that's why he just sucked at the second half, which I think is complete bullshit. But I'll start with Jeff. Which players need a bounce back season on the Tampa Bay Rays?
Big one is Brandon Lau. Looking at this guy's career, there's only been one season he's been healthy and in the major leagues the entire season, and that was 2021. He hit 39 home runs. Last year, he played in only 65 games, 8 home runs. They need production out of him. He basically needs to serve as their big bat free agent acquisition. Come back, stay on the field, and produce. And then, this is going to sound crazy, but I want to see Randy Arozarena take another step. He's been a superstar in the 2020 postseason in the World Baseball Classic. And I know it sounds crazy. The guy hit 20 home runs, 32 stolen bases, not pretty good numbers across the board last year, but I want to see him take another step forward, be more consistent. I don't need to even see more power and speed numbers. Get on base a little more. Have a little higher average on base percentage. Maybe pop a few more homers. I think he's got more power than 20 home runs, honestly. So I'd like to see, he's going to be 28 this year. I'd like to see him take the next step, kind of entering his prime and show that he has another level he can reach above what he's shown so far.
Yeah, I took a quick glance at his stats, and I definitely agree with you about the home runs part. If I was a Rays fan, I'd be looking at Arozarena, I would like to lower those. And listen, I'm a guy, I'm an old school baseball fan, whatever, but there's a mentality where I do accept if you hit for high average and if you hit like a ton of home runs, okay, I'll kind of be okay with you striking out over 100, 110 times, but last time I checked, it was like 156 and like 170 strikeouts. To hit 20 home runs, I kind of like to see that up if I was a Rays fan, of course. Jester Smith says Hicks is good for 5 home runs this year. That might be very high in terms of expectations, Jester Smith. But question for Timmy: players that need a bounce back season on the O's.
Yep, Austin Hayes. He's a guy I already mentioned who had a little bit of a down year last year. Average was around 250, and didn't have that power as often as he should have. Little lack of consistency there. And would find himself in some droughts at times. But this spring, it looked like he showed a lot of signs of improvement, hitting the cover off the ball. So I believe he's among the group to have a bounce back year. And then another player for you, Cedric Mullins. He's one of the best players in the lineup, batting leadoff for the Orioles. Had a pretty good World Baseball Classic with a triple and home run coming off the bench. And he's a player who had an amazing 2021 where he was an all-star that year and had that 30-30 home run and stolen base season. But last year, his home run total dipped to 16. He was still stealing a lot of bases, but his home run total was almost cut in half, and his average fell about 40 points. So if he can get closer to that 300 batting average and unlock a little more of his power this year, that'd be fantastic for the Orioles this year.
Li says the only bad month Gleyber Torres had was August with a batting average of 180. There's a couple other things that you need to add in there in terms of intangibles and stuff like that, Li, like the fact that sometimes he would actually slow up on the base pass. And the baseball IQ is not there. I know that's not something you can track, but the baseball IQ is not there. You do not swing 2-0 or 3-0. And I get it. Listen, players will be more aggressive in certain situations, but that's something that constantly I see. And once again, measuring from an old school baseball fan standpoint, going back to Sox, which players need a bounce back season?
Yeah, two that really step out for me. One is Trevor Story, and I know there's a bunch of, headlines with him starting the season, but he played a lot more than people really notice. I mean, he had 350 plus at bats last year. The guy only hit 238. Now he was sick. He had the injury, of course, but I need that guy to hit for more power. I think that's why the Red Sox brought him in. 16 home runs and 350 at bats. Just isn't going to get the job done, especially with the way he started his career. And then Bobby Dahlbeck fighting, he was fighting with Yu Chang, who Jeff mentioned. That's not a major league hitter, but I think Bobby Dahlbeck can, and he's shown that he can be on this ball club. He hit with 215 last year with again over 350 plate appearances. So I think those are two guys that could really kickstart this offense and help the other guys out. Trevor Story has to stay healthy. That is the main priority with such a big splash that was when we brought him in.
Yeah, so we can get to some comments real quick. Blue City says, I see Orioles, Rays, Yankees, Red Sox versus the Blue Jays. This can't be a roundtable without Jays JK. As I said, I mentioned earlier, and I know you probably weren't here, Blue City, but our Blue Jays guy unfortunately had a car issue and will not be making it on tonight. Yanks never steal bases. Hopefully, if they get Volpe on the roster, that changes. There's a couple other guys that can steal bases as well. I disagree with you can't swing 2-0 or 3-0 when you have a heater free down the dick. I do. You're not Aaron Judge. Like if Aaron Judge, I would give the 2-0 or 3-0. If you have a solid average, there's a lot more that adds on to it. If you're Gleyber Torres, you should be taking those pitches. You should be, there's a lot more that goes into that. Just it's just a heater down the middle, and it's the same. Like they teach him, and I understand maybe you're not going to see this is his fault, Li, but they're trying to teach him to be a pull hitter and not opposite field. If he was more of an opposite field hitter, balanced out in situations, I'd say okay, maybe, but still, like. I don't know whether your argument is they're trying to make Gleyber Torres a power hitter or they're trying to make Gleyber Torres a contact hitter. If you think that he shouldn't be a power hitter, he should not be swinging 2-0, 3-0. That's just my personal opinion. Gleyber would make the first or third out. Again, thank you, Jets. That's an excellent point right there. Kind of goes to my point right there. Which players are returning from injury that need to have some sort of an impact? I'll start, and I will say DJ LeMahieu right off the bat. When he's healthy, he hits 270, 280, top of the lineup. He could really help out. There's a log jam in the infield right now, but he's still at least a really good player, contrary to what some think. But I will start out with Sox in this scenario. Which players are returning from injury that need to have some sort of an impact? And I would imagine at some point down the line, it's Trevor Story, Chris Sale, and maybe James Paxton. But, if you want to add some other answers or even elaborate on those.
Yeah, those three jump out. Obviously, at first I mentioned Story coming off the UCL injury. We're expecting to have him July or after. July will be best case scenario. So another guy is Alberto Mondesi, the guy that the Red Sox fans don't really talk about that much right now. But I think, contrary to popular belief, he's a really good ball player, and he'll be back May at the earliest. And that kind of relieves the little logjam there in the middle part of the infield. But, I think Connor Wong is another guy. He could be ready for opening day coming off that bad hamstring. It was almost set that Reese McGuire was going to be the opening day catcher, but I think Connor Wong has a good chance of being that guy, and I'm a big fan of him. You mentioned Paxton. He's expected to be back in May as well. So it's going to be a good time to get these guys back. Mondesi Paxton story around the same time. Paxton had that right hamstring strain, and he didn't have the full Tommy John surgery, which is why he even has a chance to play this year. So I'm looking forward to Paxton finally pitching healthy for the Red Sox.
Question is going to bounce to Timmy. Which players are returning from injury that need to have some sort of an impact?
For the Orioles, it's going to be John Means. He's coming back from his Tommy John surgery. He's probably going to join the team in late July or August because he suffered that injury in the middle of last season. And he's a guy, former All-Star in 2019, and has thrown a no-hitter a couple seasons, 2019 and 2021, with the ERA at 3.60. That would be fantastic for the Orioles to get that level of production out of Means, especially coming off of such a big injury and surgery. So for the Orioles, John Means rejoining that rotation, it's going to be fun to watch.
And then same question applies to Jeff.
Just so I don't say Brandon Lau again, I'll say Tyler Glasnow, who came back kind of surprisingly at the end of last season. He pitched in a couple regular season games, 6 2/3 innings, 10 strikeouts, 1 run, then 5 shutout innings in starting game 2 in the postseason. He's going to be out until May, but him coming back and being healthy when he does come back and contributing to the rotation, it's going to be important because no matter what team you are, you're going to need depth in that rotation. And having Glasnow, who could really hold up a top end of a rotation, will be huge and take a lot of pressure off guys like Shane McClanahan and Drew Rasmussen and Jeffrey Springs.
Yeah, definitely. Blue Sea says, I hope Anthony Volpe makes it to the major leagues this season. I think he definitely will, whether the Yankees try to manipulate service time or not. Li says he grew in the minors as a contact hitter, a DJ LeMahieu type hitter. Well, there's 2 things that go with that. My super chat is not working. Quite interesting. Is it not? Okay. Maybe refresh the page, Jetsos Mess, but as I say, super chats are not necessarily forced. I appreciate your $50 from the other day, of course. But my question to Li is this. LeMahieu, right? First of all, he's got a better IQ than Gleyber Torres. That's number 1. Number 2, DJ LeMahieu is more of a contact hitter and someone you put at the top of the lineup. Are you really telling them to swing 2-0 and 3-0? The answer is no. Just my personal opinion, of course. The next one. How many pieces away do you think your team is from competing in a World Series? Obviously, the last World Series for the Yankees was 2009. The most recent team that's been to one, obviously, was the Rays in 20, Red Sox in 18, the Orioles, what is that? Go back to the 80s, I believe. So it's been a little bit of a while, but I'll start once again and then move up the panel. From the New York Yankees perspective, I think they're good in the bullpen. I think you might need an extra starter because of the injuries. But if you keep the kids up the middle, if you get a real third baseman along the lines, and then probably at least an outfielder, I think Brian Reynolds at the deadline could be, something that is constructed. Though the Yankees probably won't go there because they believe a lot in this youth. But if they're doing that, they should call up Jason Dominguez. But that is a story for a different day. So probably outfield, maybe a starting pitcher, get rid of Josh Donaldson, and then boom, you could be in the World Series. And also get rid of this, all this crap and nonsense in the front office, which is kind of more of not positional. But I'll start with Jeff. How many pieces away do you think your team is competing from? How do you? I think you know the question. A little bit of mumbling.
We got you.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 1 or 2, and those are acquisition. The Rays front office is usually pretty aggressive at the trade deadline. If they need 1 or 2 pieces, whether it was adding Nelson Cruz a couple of years ago, they added David Peralta when they were really on the bubble making the playoffs, and he was a big disappointment. But it looked like a good move on paper last year when they added him to try to help their offense. He didn't even hit a home run with the Rays, so he was a big disappointment. Hypothetically, if all things go as to the perfect model that the Rays have in their front office, they might need to add one bat, one guy in either the back end of the bullpen or the rotation. Maybe a combination of all three. But yeah, it's going to take a lot to get there. But yeah, if everyone stays healthy, I would say only a couple pieces might need to be added around the trade deadline to make the Rays a contender. They're not far removed from the World Series.
Timmy.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's been a while, to say the least, since the Orioles were last in the World Series. I believe it was 1983 when the Orioles won the World Series that year. The first step for the Orioles is getting to the playoffs. It's been, I think, 2016 was the last Orioles playoff appearance. And so that's the first step, of course, getting to the playoffs. In terms of how many steps to get to the World Series, I think the Orioles need to bring in a few elite pitchers, top 20 in the league. For that matter, some guys who really have that experience and have proven that they're shutdown guys. Like on their every fifth day that they pitch, they're going to get the job done for you, and you can trust them. That's something that you don't really have right now in the Orioles rotation. At least no one who's really proven that yet. And so if they can bring in an elite starting pitcher and possibly an elite second baseman or shortstop to mix in with those prospects that they have in the infield, those would be, in my opinion, the most major and crucial pieces to getting them to that next level.
Before we go to Sox, just want to point some things out. You hear the Mets need plenty of help. It's my opinion. Yanks need manager, starting pitcher, third base, left field, center, left field, and catcher. Catcher, I don't think is much of his need. Maybe you could replace catcher with GM. Refreshed works. Thanks. Shout out to Justice Mess for the $10 super chat. Hicks should be cut ASAP. Yeah, I mean, I think 90 to 95% of the fan base would agree with you on that one. And then Sox, how many pieces away do you think the Red Sox are from competing in a World Series?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pitching is obvious. You know, this team isn't that far removed from being very close to advancing to the World Series just a few years ago. So I think a superstar pitcher, a superstar starter would be ideal. And then, you know, you got to have something better than Kenley Jansen, which I believe. But, you know, we need some star power there in the back end of the bullpen. I think the offense has plenty of talent there. So, you know, I don't want to sound too optimistic, but we're not that far away.
All right. Next question, number 6. Well, at least number 6 on my document. But I'll start with Sox on this one. How do you value the farm system for your team? Not much to look at, or very enticing.
I think it's a little bit more enticing than it was a couple years ago. My worry with the Red Sox is they don't love their homegrown talent. Like they love bringing in guys that have already kind of tried to prove themselves with other ball clubs. I wish the Red Sox would kind of go with their own guys a little bit more. We see that with Mata. I believe in Brian Mata a little bit more than I did coming into last year. But I don't know what it is. The Sox love going outside in rather than inside out. I think it's proven with other teams and especially other sports. Building homegrown talent is important. So I don't really value it too much as of right now.
I think I know the answers for the next two, but I'll start with Timmy.
Yeah, the Orioles farm system right now is in a great spot, as I mentioned before, ranked number 1 among the 30 MLB teams in that department, and you have a lot of guys across all the levels of the system who have that major league potential. Heston Kjerstad's a guy I haven't mentioned yet, but he's really had a great spring this year at Major League Camp. He's a guy who the Orioles drafted second overall, I believe, in 2020. And 2020, he did not play any games. That was the COVID year, but also that year he was battling, I believe, a heart condition that caused him to not even be able to practice in 2020. And that also kept him out for, I think, all of 2021, that and also an injury. And then last year, he finally made his professional debut playing in single A, high A, and low A, and put up some pretty inspiring numbers there. So he's a guy who hasn't played in double A yet, but a first-round talent and a guy that the Orioles are very high on right now. I could see him joining the team late this season. Just needs to build up those reps in Double-A and maybe Triple-A. But I could see him coming directly from Double-A if the Orioles feel he's ready to make that jump.
Hey, Baltimore, the Yankees have a good second baseman in Gleyber Torres. I don't think they would trade in division, but then again, that has happened before. I mean, I probably count on one hand that trades that have happened, and at least the last few years have been, in division and stuff like that. Jeff.
Yeah, the Rays value their farm system, and they don't have the Wander Franco, obviously, because he's moved on up to the major leagues, but they've still got a lot of talented young players, and I haven't seen any prospect ranking system that has them outside of the top 5 to 10 farm system. So the Rays always keep that strong. Part of it is if they do have a struggling season, they will sell off some smaller parts and get some of these Double-A, Triple-A players that have already kind of caught their eye in other teams' farm systems. Their scouting is outstanding at the minor league level, and it has been. I mean, again, that's the reason why a team can spend so much less money than every other team, except for I guess Baltimore lately. But that's the only reason this team continues to compete year in and year out is the farm system. There's a lot of importance placed on that.
Definitely. Getting into a little bit of the predictions. I'll start with Jeff. Where do you believe your team is finishing in the division, and who do you think is most threatening to that spot?
I'm going to say I would predict the Rays to finish second in the division.
Okay.
And I kind of see a trio of teams that I could see, depending on how circumstances playing out. I think the Yankees, Rays, and Jays are the three top teams in the division right now. I could see Boston and Baltimore, coming up and surprising people. But I do think those are the top three teams. I think the Blue Jays, it seems like they've been on paper a team that should have been tops in the division for a couple of years now, but I haven't seen it yet. I mean, they had the same outcome in the postseason as the Rays last year. They added a couple Bassett, they added a couple veterans, and maybe that will help them get over the hump a little bit there. So really, my prediction would be that the Yankees and Rays are battling it out for first place in the AL East when all push comes to shove. And I think the team that's healthier, I think the team that, frankly, I think that's going to decide it. If the Yankees are an older team, but, if they stay healthy, I think they'll win the division. The Rays are a younger team. If they stay healthy, which I guess on paper they should stay healthier than the Yankees. But they were a mess. I blocked out a couple months of the season because it was just sad to watch the lineups being put out there. So I kind of view the Yankees as the biggest team I'm kind of gauging the Rays against this season personally.
Timmy, where do you think the Orioles will finish, and who's a threat to that spot?
I have another fourth place finish in the division for the Orioles this year. As much as I want them to take that next step, I think it's going to be tough to repeat, especially the bullpen success from last season. But that 30 win jump from 2021 to 2022 was just that's tough to do again. Like another big jump like that. I think they have it in them, but it's going to be some growing pains for the Orioles this year with all the younger prospects getting time. So I don't think everything's going to click just like that. It's going to be a little bit of a process, but in terms of teams that the Orioles are going to have to battle out, I think it's going to be the Rays and Red Sox. I think I have the Yankees and Blue Jays in the top two spots of the division. But the Orioles, they'll be trying to get in that playoff spot, I guess wild card, battling out with the Rays and Red Sox.
Sox, where do you think the Red Sox will finish, and who's a threat to their spot?
Yeah, I think I don't know what it is, but Jeff mentioned the Blue Jays should be better than they are, and they just haven't shown us anything. And I'm not buying in anymore. Like, I really do think they're going to be closer to the bottom of the division this year. They have to prove it to me, and the Red Sox have a little bit more of that it factor. I feel like, especially in recent years, they weren't supposed to be one win away from the World Series 3 years ago, and they were. And I think they're going to surprise people this year with their health. It's going to be a third place finish for the Red Sox, and I think it's going to be Tampa Bay and Yankees above them.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I'll say that the Yankees will win the division. That's not even me being biased, but I last year I bought into the Blue Jays Kool-Aid so much. I thought, wow, this is a really good team, and I think I had them either winning the division or second place. I had the Yankees not making the playoffs, by the way. I was totally wrong. But in terms of that, it's just last year you could go ahead and say, well, it's Charlie Montoya, this and the other thing. I just feel like they're mostly all talk, and that it just never comes to fruition when the time is right. So I mean, I know 3/4 of the panel already that think the Blue Jays aren't very good, and well, they're good. It's just they never live up to the hype. Timmy, would you have the same feeling?
The Blue Jays it's always a question mark with their standings. I mean, their starting pitching seems to be pretty good with Alek Manoah and some other guys. So I think that can get them there. They have a great lineup with Bo Bichette there and Vlad. So they just got to put it together. I think that's what it comes down to. And I have confidence that they'll be top 2 in the division this year for sure.
Okay. LI says my AL standings: Blue Jays 99-63, Yankees 92-70, Orioles 83-79, Rays 81-81, and Red Sox 77-85 in his opinion. Moving on. Standings right down, and I know obviously some of this may have been a little bit redundant, but standings right from 1 to 5 in the division. I will start with Sox on this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Yankees, Rays, Sox, Jays, and Orioles.
Damn, so not even, as I said last night, not even top 3 for the Jays, but I guess they got to prove something to us. Timmy?
I think we're sleeping a little bit on Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios, and Alek Manoah, what they can do for the Blue Jays. If they stay healthy, I still have them finishing, I think, second to the Yankees in the division. I think we're gonna see similar standings to what we saw last year with Yankees. I guess Yankees were they first or second last year? I can't remember.
They were first.
Okay, so yeah, I think I see sort of a repeat of the standings from last year with Yankees at first, and then the Blue Jays and Rays and Orioles and Red Sox.
Jeff?
I'll go Yankees, Rays. Oh, man, after talking about the Jays, I want to drop them. I want to drop them so bad. I think I'll keep them third, then Baltimore and Boston. But I really kind of want to put the Baltimore. I kind of want to put Toronto last. I really want to bump Boston up to third, keep Baltimore at third, at fourth, and I'll go ahead and say that. I'll say Yankees, Rays, Boston, Baltimore, Toronto, just to be different.
All right. This is an interesting one, and then we'll get to some of the comments as well to kind of wrap it up a little bit. This one's interesting because it kind of changes from year after year and also based on competitiveness. I'll start with Jeff. Who do you think is the biggest rival to your team in the division?
Ooh, boy, we get in fights with all of you. Last year, I feel like the Yankees and Rays had a lot of testy moments, especially with Josh Donaldson being at the center of a lot of it. I all time though, I think Boston, is the team that the Rays have really had the most contentiousness with year after year and some of the biggest brawls. I love that. I think the Yankees and Red Sox both hate the Rays, and I love that. Obviously, they're never going to be the historic rivals that they're too young to ever be in that boat. But all time, I'd say Boston. Although that Yankees dust up a couple of years ago in the ALCS, that was a pretty contentious potential. Yeah, I'm changing my mind again. I'm going to say the Yankees right now are probably the team that that the Rays and the Yankees hate each other, or the Rays hate the Yankees more than any other team. Let's say that.
I would also, I mean, you mentioned the ALCS thing, the CC Sabathia moment where he basically threw away $500,000 just to hit somebody.
Yeah,
I wish there was that dog mentality on this team now, despite some of his views on the Yankees now. Good night, Jeffrey. Thank you for tuning in. Timmy, biggest rival to the Orioles in division.
Man, it's tough to pick one right now. I'm thinking over the years, and the Red Sox and Yankees, those are the teams that come to mind. But I think there's a little bit of something going on with the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, they got some younger guys coming up right now. Bo Bichette and Vlad are the two, and Biggio that come to mind. So those younger guys mixed with some of the Orioles' younger guys, I think there's a little bit of a clash there, and for who can really be better. With our guys like Brian Mountcastle and even throw in Mullins and Hayes there, and Adley Rutschman. So, I want to be a little different, and I'm gonna go Blue Jays might be our biggest rival right now.
Sox.
Let's be honest, Big Blue. We know, what it is here between the Sox and Yankees. Now, I'd like to say that I appreciate the rivalry between the Rays and the Red Sox. There's something about every time the Sox go down to the Trop, something goofy happens. Like, I don't know if you realize that, Jeff, but the one that I can think of is when Devers hit that ball up in the rafters, and there's a lot of rafter balls, but it's like the ball gets stuck up there and never comes down. It's just something crazy happens there every single time. I appreciate that rivalry. The Jays and Orioles never really bothered me at all, but it's the Yankees, man. I can't stand them. I absolutely cannot stand them.
Yet we have a show together, so
yeah,
all fun and games, of course. Baltimore finally relevant again. Yeah, they're coming up through the ranks. I listen, the Orioles don't really scare me, but I kind of admire what they're doing little by little. I just wish that they probably get a little bit more star power, and they remove that wall in left field, that little indent that they put in. It just didn't make a lot of sense.
They should take that indent and put it in right field at Yankee Stadium.
That's a good one. I will admit that might be one of the more better comments of the night. I'm gonna say, contrary to Sox, I'm gonna say the Blue Jays are the biggest Yankees rival. Now, the Sox have been, they've been not so good the last few years. Though you could sit here and say, oh, the 2021 playoffs and going back to 2018. I think the Blue Jays have been a little bit more, shit talking, like Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's known for that. He's notorious for that. All these things. Oh, I would never sign a check and play for the Yankees. This, that, and the other thing. So I think the Yankees, I would like to, have them be a little more mentally tough on the field. I don't think they will be because, you don't really see like that type of baseball grind and grit anymore. But I would say the Blue Jays are the top rival for the Yankees in division. I think they'll probably pose the most threat. Who on your teams will have the most home runs? I'll start and I will say Aaron Judge. Doesn't mean he's going to hit 50, though. I'll start Sox next.
Rafael Devers, you book it. He will hit 50.
Oh, wow. All right. Timmy.
If Anthony Santander stays the whole season here, if he doesn't get traded, which I think there's a chance he does get traded, but if he does stay the whole season, it's going to be him.
Jeff.
Brandon Lau, and the Rays will be very happy if he's on the field enough to do that.
Who do you think will have the biggest impact on each of your teams? Wow, that's an interesting one. I'm going to stick it to Jeff for this one because that's actually something I have to think about.
Let's say Wander Franco. He's was the biggest prospect in baseball, signed that massive deal after just basically a half season in the major leagues. And he missed most or half of last season with injury, and his numbers were good. I mean, honestly, the first 2 weeks of the season, it looked like he might be the AL MVP front runner, and then he kind of normalized, and then he got hurt. So I'd like to see him start to take the next step and see what kind of player he's going to be, whether he's a 20-30 home run guy or whether he's going to hit for a little higher average than he has. I think if he really takes a big jump forward in his game, offensively especially, because I really liked him defensively last year, then I think that's going to just lead to big things across the rest of the lineup.
Timmy, who do you think will have the biggest impact on the Baltimore Orioles?
It's going to be Adley Rutschman. He's right up the middle playing catcher and directing all the traffic there. So he's been great helping with the pitchers, and his defense is just great, throwing out runners and making key blocks. And then he brings the bat, one of the best hitting catchers. So he's Mr. Consistent. You know what you're getting from Adley Rutschman, and he's one of the most exciting players to watch right now. So it's going to be him.
Sox.
Yeah, I think Chris Sale, whether it's positive or negative, he's going to have the biggest impact on the Sox this year. And it's just kind of depressing, in my opinion, because it's like, how many years can we rely on Chris Sale to be the backbone of this team? We need it to happen right now. This guy's on the back end of his career, and he's not the guy he used to be. But I think it's he still has a case to be number one on this rotation. So it's going to be Sale.
This is the basic answer, and if I could go different, I'd probably say Anthony Volpe, because he could be a spark plug for this team. I think Rodon could also be that, but I think it's going to be Aaron Judge, because he carried the Yankees. In my opinion, he single-handedly carried the Yankees to divisional win, go to the playoffs. He crapped out, but you run out of gas when you carry a lot of people sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and say Aaron Judge to be basic. If you can trade one player from your team to another team, what player would that be? I'd probably go ahead. There's like 4 answers I'll put on the table. There is Josh Donaldson, Aaron Hicks, Gleyber Torres, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I will start with Sox.
Somebody that I would trade. Who would I trade? Bobby Dahlbeck. Who else? Nick Pivetta. Those are 2 guys that stick out to me right off the bat.
Timmy?
I would trade Anthony Santander and maybe move some prospects, because there's going to be an overflow of prospects at some point with all the guys the Orioles have in their farm system. So if you can trade some prospects away, as much as I don't want to do that, I think that can get them an elite bat or an elite pitcher. So Anthony Santander is the one major leaguer, though, that I think should be traded.
Jeff.
There's not a lot to pick from. I guess Harold Ramirez, maybe. He hit 300 last year, and I don't think that's ever going to happen again. So maybe trade high. I don't think he's really much better than what else the Rays have to offer as far as DH, and he's kind of a liability in the field. So I guess I'll say Harold Ramirez.
Eli has a comment. I would do this trade. DJ Mayhew. You say you like DJ Mayhew. Meanwhile, you have him in almost every trade to every team. Yesterday it was the Cubs. Today it's the D-backs. Pavin Smith. I don't know who that is. This is a salary dump. Gives the D-backs a third baseman. The Yankees save $15 million. That is not realistic whatsoever. If you were the owner of your teams, what would you do different for coaches and signings? So I'll start, and then I'll head back to Jeff. Well, I wouldn't have Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman as my manager and general manager, that is. And I'd probably get rid of all this analytics stuff. And well, I mean, listen, analytics not totally getting rid of, but I feel like they overuse it, and they really don't have a touch of personal scouting. Frankie Montas, with the injury, Joey Gallo with, basically not being a New York type of player. So that's what I would do differently. And then obviously going down to the nitty gritty, Hicks, IKF, Gleyber Torres, and Josh Donaldson would be gone from my team. I'd trade for Brian Reynolds. But Jeff?
If I was the owner, the team would probably be worse. The Rays have made some big swings attempts, I'll say, in free agency. They were very close to actually signing Freddie Freeman last offseason. They were willing to throw a large sum of money out for the right guy. And there were some reports that they were offering like 1 year, $50 million contracts to a few players recently, just to say, hey, just, $50 million for 1 year, see if you can get more money next year, with inflation and everything. No sales tax in Florida. So it sounds like they've been tempting some players, but no one's actually bitten on it. So I don't know that there's much. I think maybe the one thing I'd request my front office do is I would like to see them try to stretch out starting pitchers so they can actually pitch, 7, 8, 9 innings occasionally, not just basically you're going 6 and you're done, pretty much as a rule. That would be the one thing that I would just try to get them to say, Shane McClanahan looks like he might be a really, really talented guy. If we can get him another inning or 2 per game, that seems like it would be a smart thing for us and for him. So I guess that would be my only complaint.
I know I talked about it before. That was the shift. I think I don't want to say it was reinventing the wheel, but what do you think of that? Because I feel like the Rays were the ones that started the bullpen day. What do you think of that?
They were. And I think this was back in the Joe Madden days, and I believe it was really out of necessity. They just didn't have any healthy guy that they wanted to bring up from the minor leagues to start. So they said, all our bullpen guys are going to pitch a couple innings. And that kind of grew to, hey, this team, we're going to get the top 6 guys of their lineup out with this guy because we don't want our starting pitcher to face this lineup more than twice. So that's where, you'd start a reliever, even if it's just 1 inning, face the first 3, 4 batters, bring in your bulk guy. And that was all, the Rays are very out of the box, and they have to be. And they're not afraid to take chances with trying new things. So yeah, that's an interesting move that really kind of has been adopted by a lot of teams. And I think it's all based on their philosophy of we don't want the pitcher to face the same batters more than twice in a game, which I know mathematically, the third time through the lineup is usually when the team hits you the most. So that's what the Rays are trying to avoid. But yeah, it's at times, I'm thinking of when they pulled Blake Snell in the postseason a couple of years ago. Yeah, which seemed then and still remains to seem like a terrible, terrible mistake. So I understand the math. It's just tough in a game-to-game situation to stomach it sometimes.
Jeffrey, you're not blocked. I still see your comments, so I don't know what you're talking about, to be completely fair. Going to Timmy on this one, if you were the owner of your team, what would you do differently?
Well, I was a little confused about the Adam Frazier signing, to be honest. I think the Orioles have had their share of these older free agents come in and get time in the infield. But I think now, as the Orioles are starting to turn the corner, I think it's time for the prospects and the younger guys to get time instead of older players and veterans like Frazier. So I'm hoping that Frazier is not on the field a ton this season. And I was a little confused by the 1 year, $8 million deal that the Orioles handed out to him this offseason. And then besides that, I'd like to see Anthony Santander, maybe see what you can get for him, shop around a little bit, and make a deal happen in that regard, because the outfield's getting crowded. I'm really excited for what Colton Cowser and Connor Norby can do in the MLB, and they should be up within the first couple months of the year. So the outfield's getting crowded, so it's going to be time to move on from a few guys.
Sox.
Yeah, I would. If I was ownership, I would first of all get my hands out of what I like to call foreign entanglements with European soccer leagues and hockey teams and all this other bullshit, and try to fucking win some baseball games. How about that? Wow. I would have signed Xander Bogaerts. I would have paid Rafael Devers like they did, but that was just to cover up the soreness of letting Xander Bogaerts go. I would ask Alex Cora not to, go to the bullpen so fast. I feel like I'd like a complete game here and there every once in a while. But other than that, I would like to see David Ortiz on my coaching staff. But other than that, I like what kind of coaching staff we have going on. I just want to see pitchers go longer. And I understand the analytics like Alex talks about. But there's something to be said about saving your bullpen for later on in the season. I think we got the pitching staff that can do it.
Yeah, definitely. So with that being said, I think we're going to start closing it out here. I'm going to start with Jeff, Timmy, Sox, and myself. And Sox, again, your username, your headline just gets a little bit worse every single time.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm just excited for the season to start. I mean, the World Baseball Classic got me amped up, so I'm ready to go. I think this is going to be a super competitive division. I would not be surprised at any order in the standings, depending on some dumb luck and a lot of injuries. Every team's going to have to deal with some of them. And you could jumble these 5 teams up in any order and say that's going to be it. And I'd say, I can see that. I honestly think that's the margin of error in this division. I'm sure there's going to be a team that wins 100 games and one that, wins 75. But it's all of our guesses are roll of the dice. Just really, I do think that any team in this division is capable of taking that step forward and winning not only the division, but the World Series. I truly believe that. I also think any team in this division is capable of finishing dead last if things go against them. And maybe they trade off some pieces at the trade deadline if things are looking bad. This is going to be an exciting season.
Timmy, your final thoughts.
Yeah, well, this season, this is the most excited I've been since the Orioles had Adam Jones, Manny Machado, and Jonathan Scope. So it's been a while since the Orioles have had this level of excitement going into a season. Coming off the 83 wins last year, I think it's time for them to continue building off of that. Let the young guys get their time, and let's just get started. 1 week away, we're gonna be up in Boston, so excited for that one. That series is gonna be a lot of fun, and excited for baseball to get going again.
Sox.
Yeah, man. Great show tonight, guys. Appreciate Jeff and Timmy joining us, man, on the Dead Red podcast. Thank you to everybody in the chat for stopping by, man. And, 1 week away from baseball season, here it is again. And by the way, NBA playoffs sneaking around the corner. Watch out for the Celtics to win a title this year. Finally get over that Golden State hump. Go Celtics, go Sox, man. And I'll toss it over to Alex.
Yankees equals Pepsi. Yeah, it never ends. But
it will never.
I actually did have a Coke tonight when I went to my uncle's house to drop by for some meds, but I guess that was a mistake, right?
No, I mean that was one of the few good calls that you made.
Okay, all right, we'll live with that for now. But I definitely appreciate Timmy. Excuse me, Jesus Christ, I'm getting tired here. Timmy and Jeff popping on tonight. It's a little bit sad that, of course, Scott couldn't make it because he had some car issues, but he said he would make it up to me. And even that, Scott is a great guy. If you guys haven't already, I pinned Jeff's YouTube in the chat, so feel free to subscribe. I also put everyone's socials in the description. So once again, follow them, do all the good stuff on social media. Tomorrow night, we'll have the Friday night Knicks podcast, Sox No Yankees equals Cowboys. As a Giant fan, it hurts me to say that, but the Yankees kind of are implementing themselves into the Cowboys, and I don't like to say that a lot. But tomorrow we got the Friday Night Knicks podcast and a lot more content coming your way before we got opening day next week, and a lot more fun stuff from there. So do all the good stuff, guys, and we will see you next time. Peace out.